My name's Iman Amrani and I'm a journalist at The Guardian, and in this week's episode of Modern Masculinity we're going to be looking at dads. Now there are so many different areas you could look at when it comes to fatherhood, but I'm looking specifically at new fathers and how restrictions and the pandemic are affecting this new experience in life for them.
I think it does help to talk about the issues you face and the challenges that everyone has, but men are still quite closed off.
I was really in a dark place. I'd let it just manifest. If I did speak out early enough, it wouldn't have gone into the dark place I did.
So it is really difficult to open up this conversation because it's not about mums versus dads. Of course, mothers go through so many things, and I personally feel like I have an awareness of some of the challenges they face, but I know a lot less about what dads go through. So I thought it would be important to start a conversation and ask fathers what the experience has been like for them. I thought I'd start this journey by reaching out to Mark Williams, who is a father's mental health campaigner. He happened to be coming to London the week that I called him, and he said that he was going to be presenting a document that he made in lockdown, collating loads of information and statistics about fathers' mental health, which he wanted to deliver to his MP. So I went to go meet him at Westminster with a number of other campaigners.
Oh, they're topless, they're topless. Sorry.
Time's gone by. You would come with this report and be like, this is really important, it's about children, it's about mental health, it's about protecting people, but you can't compete with people coming out and doing a topless protest. I mean, where the camera's going to be at?
I know.
3, 2, 1. Nice. Great.
So this report explains 10 years of all the work I've done, speaking to all the parents, and it's backed up with research from professors, doctors, everyone who's got a massive interest in perinatal mental health. It's also saying that 1 in 10 fathers suffer from postnatal depression itself. Fathers are suffering from PTSD after witnessing birth trauma, and they're not getting that support.
I wanted to have a proper conversation with Mark about the work he's doing, especially because at the moment it really does feel like it's difficult to put a spotlight on these kinds of issues, what with everything else going on in the world. So I went to go meet him at his home in Bridgend.
Do you want a cup of tea or?
Oh, do you know what? I'd love a cup of tea. Yeah, Mark, I would love a cup of tea. You can stick the kettle on. We'll be there in about 8 minutes. Hello.
Oh, good in.
Thanks.
Just don't fill the wall. We're doing a wallpaper now, so there's a couple of things. So don't fill them up.
You know, when we're talking about the issues that dads are facing, all the stresses, what's the kind of main concern?
Yeah, like myself, I've got an undiagnosed disorder called ADHD. So you're self-managing that before you became a dad. So like dads got bipolar, schizophrenia, clinical depression, anxiety before they become dads. Lack of sleep can cause a massive impact on your mental health. And I also didn't get that bond and attachment as well, which this overwhelming feeling of love that society tells us, you know. I was really in a dark place, very dark place. I'd let it just manifest to a point where what I know now, if I did speak out early enough, it wouldn't have gone into the dark place I did.
It's interesting to hear your story, but it's also quite terrifying to think of that in the context that we're in now. What would you say to a father that's struggling at the moment?
My journey's always been about something good has got to come out to something bad. And it's my personal experience is saying, look, don't suffer in silence. I know that everyone says that, but literally you need to talk to somebody. All these conversations were happening with mum years ago, but the conversation are changing. People realising about postnatal depression mums now or perinatal mental health. So, but with fathers, my work's never been about taking the attention away from mums either. What I'm saying is we have to look after dads as well, because we've got same-gendered parents, you know, stay-at-home dads, single dads. There's different pressures now than when I was a new dad. You've got social media, you know, there's perfection, being a perfect parent, which doesn't exist.
I mean, women have all these other issues they face as mothers, but I kind of feel like I'm a bit more aware of those.
Yeah.
It feels like that conversation with dads in terms of family and their expectations and like what the stresses are going to be, that conversation isn't actually at the same point yet.
No, society has changed now. You know, mum is up in Westminster now and in different jobs, dad's at home. We've got to look at the services differently now and think of a more family approach. How many men do we encourage to go into maternity services to be a midwife or health visitor as well? You know, we encourage more women now to go into other industries, and rightly so. But we need to encourage men as well going to maternity services, so maybe possibly they could have those conversations.
If fathers aren't doing well, that's awful for them individually, but ultimately if that impacts on their partner, if it impacts on mum, it's going to impact on the kids as well.
It's all about supporting all parents for their mental health. We all got mental health, it's either good or bad, and giving them the right tools. And some dads just need an understanding what they're going through, knowing that there's other fathers out there just feel like guilt, or you know, I've got a bond attachment, and that could be enough. But what happens is, if that early prevention and support in place, it just goes on and on and on, and to the point where we know now that suicide, up to 47 times more likely a risk of suicide in fathers than at any other time in a man's life. And that's shocking when you think of it. We have to look at people's behaviours rather than judge them. Why is that person behaving in a certain way since the baby's been born or during pregnancy? And that's what we need to do.
Hello.
Hello, hi.
Hi, hi.
Hi,
How's it going?
Hello.
This is all recorded, by the way.
I thought we'd do some instructions first and then record it, but no.
So I wanted to speak to some fathers that have young children at this time, and a friend of mine reached out to a couple of people he knew in dad's WhatsApp groups that he belongs to, because they exist, dad's WhatsApp groups. I didn't know that, but it is a thing.
I think there's lots of WhatsApp groups. Is everybody from the same one?
I'm in the Forest Gate Dads WhatsApp group, which is mostly DIY tips, asking if you can borrow a ladder.
Local takeaway knowledge.
Yeah, local takeaway.
I've made quite a few friends out of it though. I'm assuming the other guys have as well. We've had nights out pre-COVID. We've had nights out.
So fatherhood sounds like a difficult job at the best of times, even when there's not a global pandemic going on. But what with the restrictions, childcare, working from home, and everything else, just including life that goes on, I thought it would be a good idea to get some dads together so that they could even speak to one another about their own experiences.
I have a 2-year-old, he'll be 3 in May, and a 11-month-old, he'll be 1 in a month, as you could do the math. I also had a son born in 2016, and he died in 2018. So that was sort of, we were sort of starting to feel like we might kind of re-enter the world when lockdown happened. So that timing wasn't great.
It's been tough. My father passed away in January last year, and my mum is on her own, and so that's been a little bit hard because she's been shielding as well, and so it's that time you want to be rallying around.
Obviously, the kids are really starting to notice things now, especially my 4-year-old.
I mean, 2-year-old, he's old enough to realize it's different or that it's frustrating, but too young to understand it, really.
I do worry about things like how much interaction my son gets with other children.
You all focus on your children, which is great. But when you think about yourself personally, the challenges for fathers, what would you kind of say the main ones have been?
Sometimes I think the lack of sleep, as in my son was young and didn't sleep very well, and then you're sort of getting up and you're going up. All I was doing was commuting upstairs to go to work all day, and you feel just shattered.
I miss having other, I don't know how to phrase this, sort of, other aspects of your identity. Like when I'm teaching a class, I'm a teacher. When I'm in a meeting in person, it's a very different thing to when I'm on Microsoft Teams. It does feel like you don't have any other aspects of your identity right now because you don't see anyone else. You're around your kids all the time. Yeah, it's just relentless is the thing.
I feel like the time I'm spending with my children it's not quality time. I feel like I'm not focused. I'm sure women feel like that. My wife feels like that too. She thinks she's probably laughing because she's felt this for years because she's had to juggle motherhood and working for the last 4 years now. So, and she works from home all the time. So, I've just discovered it in the last year.
It's probably something to do with the generation we are of dads. I feel like, certainly different to our dad's experience of fatherhood. You sort of need to be a bit more woke about it, or I certainly feel that a bit of pressure almost to be like that.
One of the things I'd spoken to this guy about, Mark, about fathers and mental health, he was saying about
when, you know, the health workers come to check on the pregnant women in the home, and he was saying he kind of recommends that they check in on dad and see how dad's doing as well, and that doesn't always happen, but that it would be useful if they did do that. What do you guys think about that? Did you get asked about how you were doing when you had your kids? Do you think?
No.
No, never. So it's a tricky thing because it's like, you know, like with maternity leave is a lot longer than paternity leave, right? Like, as it probably should be, especially if the mother's breastfeeding. The health visitors don't really talk to you. Not that they don't talk to you, but they don't ask about you. You know, you go to appointments if your wife's there. Whoever's there will talk to your wife. So it's sort of this tricky thing where it's like James and Matt were saying, like, we're maybe the first generation to be as involved as we are. We're doing things that the kind of systems aren't set up for, but we're also not set up for it. Like, we were talking about that WhatsApp group, and the moms group is all about childcare stuff, and the dads group is all about DIY. I mean, it's like such a cliche, but we're all really involved dads, but we don't talk about it. This is probably the first in-depth conversation I've had with other dads about being a dad. You know, we just don't really, it's like we're involved, but we don't talk about it, and other people don't talk about it with us.
Do you think it's useful to talk about it?
Yeah, I do. I've got a good friend who I've talked a lot about it. I mean, I don't know if I was that like happy, like over the moon to become a dad. Like, I think everybody expects for you to be super happy that this baby turns up in your life, but yeah, nobody asks you. It took a really long time to bond with my children, but no, yeah, you never talk about it. No, yeah, like you just don't.
Our children are all of ages where we've bonded and we're kind of in it. But like the first 6 months for me I had a real feeling of like inadequacy and kind of, not feeling good enough somehow because of that. And like loss of identity, I experienced a lot then.
Men are still quite closed off as we are. It's still that sort of man up culture and, get on with it and focus should be on the mum and all that, which it should be, but it's just the way things are, I think. But maybe I'm being naive.
Overwhelmingly, I have felt a sense of the fact that you are all good. You're all good dads is the impression that I get. I don't think and nothing sounds. It doesn't sound bad. It doesn't. It just sounds a bit tired.
Yeah, very tired.
I guess
always tired.
Yeah.
So it's been fascinating having these conversations for me personally, because I do have an awareness of some of the things that mums go through. I've spoken to people in my family about it, but I don't really hear dads talking about these things. And to hear them say that they feel like there's a loss of their identity, or to hear that the statistics for suicide are so much worse after becoming a father, I just think that's absolutely terrifying. And it concerns everyone. It concerns the kids, it concerns, mum or the partner. And just think it's really important that we can try and have these conversations. And also, just looking forward, I hope that with the new announcement we've had and the sun coming out, hopefully we can start to move forward into a more positive space. And I would just like to hear if any of you have got any things you'd like us to look at for this series. Please leave a comment or get in touch with me on social media. Like, comment and subscribe to stay up to date with the series. And that's it. I'm done. Nothing else to give.